And this guy again is just interesting, and it's strange. I don't know much about his background, but his name is Paul Sommers, and he has sort of a compatriot named Ryan Brewster, and they both worked for the USDA and like the Forest Service of all things, is what his background was. And apparently, I guess maybe his like PhD or something along those lines was like prior to the war, he was writing on like forestry in the Pacific Northwest, and maybe his PhD was on like the significance and importance of orchards and tree agriculture in conflict areas, which I don't even know where he like cooked that up. But his kind of his theory was, and you know what's funny is I heard this from someone, this old like retired general that we had a dinner with once in Virginia. Um, he started going on about how his little lobbying project he was working on was lifting the pistachio embargo against Afghanistan. This is a separate person, but the connection will make sense in a second. And what he argued was that, like, you know, apparently Afghanistan once was like a hugely important pistachio producer, is where we got them from there in Iran, but then we embargoed them in the 70s. I guess in 79 or whatever, when you know the Russians invaded, we embargoed, and then pistachios, and then California pistachio growing took off. So this guy's idea was we need to lift the embargo now that we're and let the Afghans start growing pistachios and selling them here. But this guy ran into resistance from the California agricultural lobby, who was happy to do this. Now on the flip side, you have this guy Paul Sommers and these fellows from the USDA who have this theory that basically, amongst other things, orchards bring stability, like that the pistachio, partially because of the embargo, partially because of the conflict. What do you do in a war? What happens is all the pistachio orchards and fruit pomegranate orchards and stuff get cut down because they take a few years to grow and they get burned or used for fodder. And then the people end up more impoverished because they're more beholden to cash crops and things that aren't like permaculture-ish, more labor
I
intensive.
read something that said that that was part of the reason for the spike in poppy growth in Afghanistan. Was it's like so easy, not easy to grow, but you could grow so much of it, and it grows like I guess quickly. And so
Mm-hmm,
like even if somebody like does burn down your field, like you could plant a new one. Where
mm-hmm.
planting a new grove of fruit trees is going, you know, years down the line is when they'll finally start to bear, and it's a lot of capital cost to maintain these trees through that time.
Exactly, exactly. So there again, there's a superficial and possibly real plausibility to his theory that like if we can get these people planting orchards again, it'll stabilize things. You know what I mean? They're going to
Mm-hmm.
invest more, but they're not going to do that until they feel comfortable and stable. You know what I mean? So there's sort of a catch-22. You know,
Yeah.
um, so that's what his sort of driving theory was.
Can I just
Um,
add? I don't know if you're aware, but Andrew Coburn wrote an article, and I don't know if it's directly related to this program, but one of the things they were trying to do in the Helmand River Valley, and I think this was like 2016, 2017, was get more people to grow trees. And so they gave everybody, I think, solar powered water pumps versus
this
the
sounds
diesel
very
ones
familiar.
that they had.
Uh-huh.
And rather than growing trees, they grew twice as much poppy was the
Yeah, yeah, I
outcome.
know this story. You know, I'd forgotten it, and I'm glad you reminded me. But yeah, that's a true story that I was that I that, yeah that so the USDA would get all these kind of cockamamie ideas. You know what I mean? The trees they wanted to grow there would be like sort of erosion control and barriers, and they had this bright idea that would cut down on certain things. But you're exactly right. USDA was all over the place, kind of coming up with these ideas like how can we improve agriculture and how can we get Afghans to farm and do things that'll be up to our standards. And they had these bright ideas like they got tons of money was invested into a fruit packing plant in Lashkargah, adjacent to the Lashkargah airport, with the idea that since Afghan they can produce good pomegranate there, that we'll figure out a way to get them to market. You know what I mean? This was driven by another theory that USDA was like, we need roads. Like, ask a Marine that was in Helmand in 2009 through 11, and it was roads, roads, roads. Most of the projects I did were roads. Paying some dude to pour gravel, paying some dude to like just plow through a field and pour gravel and build roads. It's interesting too. Smedley Butler did the same thing in Haiti. It's regarded as beneficial. Like Marines are doing it because that'll make it easier for us to patrol and get to places where we want to go. So like, and then we can call it lines of communications. But even in Haiti, they were selling it as this is going to be good for the Haitian people because they'll have an ability to get to market and improve their economy. Um, so the Marine Corps is like roads, 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 and the USDA is like roads, 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 and that's how you get just tons and tons of money put into like the contractor building the ring road that was like half of the money went to the Taliban, and all the other roads that we built, which were effectively just like dumping gravel and calling it a road, depending on the like some of them were decent, but none of them would be a road you'd go anywhere on. Was this idea that they all these USDA ideas that we need to have them develop a way to get to market and also invest in like longer term agriculture and do things our way. They need to start doing things our way. Um, Start farming our kind of wheat and if we get that, so they had these ideas and they would want to do these things, and I know Danny Scherzen is very animated when he talks about it, of doing things like pilot farms or test farms, where they would say, oh, these were professors of agriculture mostly at different farming colleges, and I don't know that I know any actual farmers to talk to them. Like, I don't know that I know any actual farmers, which is kind of, I feel like a terrible libertarian for not knowing someone with a homestead, um, but but the professors of farming would say, well, farmers are kind of naturally conservative. They're not going to take your word on things. They have to see it work. So what you need to do is you need to build a test farm and show them how it works. And when they see it, they'll do it. You know what I mean? And so they would have these representatives or pay some contractor to come around and build a little farm right outside of your base, a little mini thing. This is how you can grow wheat better. Use plastic tarps over your vegetables to start growing them a few weeks earlier, and these other little things um, that sound laughable. And most of the Afghans just like did not take it. We know what we're doing. You know what I mean? What is this pale face doing here telling me how to farm? Like, I know what I'm doing here,
Right.
you know? Um,
And Danny
and
told one of those stories on the show, and I think he said that, like, when the guy came, he was like, you could do it, but when you're done, they're going to steal it all, and that'll be
yep,
that. And that's exactly what happened to Corso.
yeah. So those now what the way USDA took it and the way this fellow Paul Summers took it is, well, you know what we need is we need more buy-in from these Marines and soldiers. They need to get trained on what farming is like and what agriculture looks like in Iraq and in Afghanistan and and what it is that we do and understand the lingo and buy into this concept. So they got a grant for a few $1 million, 3.1 million at one point. I think that might have been a re-up too, because I think the program existed before the date of this article. But to do what they called the ADAPT program, the Afghan Agriculture Pre-Deployment Training Program, where me and bunches of other soldiers and Marines would be brought to San Luis Obispo, Cal Poly, um, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and get like 2 weeks of paid vacation north of Monterey, and a few hours a day sitting in the Holiday Inn, getting lessons on what it was like the basics of agriculture, and and trying to get us to believe in the USDA's projects in Afghanistan. Um, with mixed results. It wasn't a bad. It was interesting. I learned about beekeeping a little bit. I learned a little bit. I never knew before that you had to splice almond trees. That you need one tree for the roots of the almond, because one type of tree has better roots than the other, and then you splice in the top and all this stuff I'll never use again. But well, maybe I will if I, yeah, if I ever practice agorism. But but yeah, it was this like lesson in how agriculture works, and there was some animal husbandry and teach it, and some simple stuff they taught. This would seem obvious, maybe even to me, that like scattering some shepherd kid's herd is a real pain in the butt for that kid. So like, don't do that because Marines, when we be on patrol, like the kid, they got some shepherd boy who's they'll throw clods of dirt actually in front of like a wayward sheep or whatever. But you have these Afghan teenage boys, that like young boys, that their whole job with their family is to shepherd the flock around. And yeah, when you run a patrol through there or whatever, you're going to scatter that herd and scare them off, and now you've ruined that guy's day. So one of the things they did have, they took us out to some sheep farm and basically made us try to herd sheep together by as a group, and with hilarious results because it just didn't work because we didn't know. Anyways, that was the kind of stuff that your money went to, was to have Marines spend an afternoon trying to herd sheep.
Well, I
Um,
mean, at least that will make you empathize with the Afghans a little bit. Of
yeah, it
all
did.
the
It did.
things
To be
that I've
fair.
heard about wasting money on, that seems like one of the better, one of the better ones. Because I'm sure after that, like at least those guys probably weren't like doing it for fun or anything like that anymore.
Yeah, yeah. So that and uh, so he, again, this I called him the good idea fairies because they're not. I don't know that the guy was a bad guy. You know what I mean? He was a nice enough guy with like maybe a genuine desire to see some stability and have people grow pomegranates and pistachios again, and grow their own almonds, and not focus on selling heroin, poppy and heroin, But the result was just all these like wild-eyed projects that went nowhere, and Marines getting these like cockamamie lessons in agriculture, and a bunch of money just wasted um, for nothing. Now, I don't think Afghanistan has up and adopted modern agricultural practices, or is using the latest Monsanto wheat, or Monsanto opium, for all we know. God help us, right?
Right.
um, but yeah, and now he's pivoted, at least as of like 2018. He's rejiggered the program for Pacific Command, where they're teaching how to, grow rice, and how a rice paddy works, and what agriculture in Asia looks like, getting us ready for the already training people for Pacific Command deployments is what
Right.
he's been up to now. So it kind of just tells you where we are. If we didn't already know, there's more evidence of where even like USDA is invested in this militarism and pivoting eastward to the Pacific, or westward, I guess, to the
And
Pacific.
again, seems like another example of generally failing upwards. This guy is maintained, and I'm sure, has found a way to, if not like title promotion, certainly he's making more money now than he did then, even though this isn't really helpful or achieving anything. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So